because I never remember to start the recording. So anyway, and then I have to like try to redo it or something. Okay. So I don't know if you can you see my little PowerPoint thingy bobber over here? All right. Yep, I understand. So, okay, not now probably. Can you still see it?
Not the PowerPoint.
Huh. All right, let me try again.
I can see the screen, but not the PowerPoint.
So what I did was I put it in show mode, which made it switch screens.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if I can get rid of this. Okay. All right. Can you see it now?
Yes.
In the company that I work for, almost all of our meetings are video conference meetings. And because there's always somebody in some location that's remote. And so everything is video, and all of the sharing kind of stuff is integrated into the video, and it's really sophisticated and all that, but it seems like inevitably there's always some kind of a technical problem. So we're pretty lucky to have made it this far. So what I want to do is take a little bit of time here to talk about what I see as some of the key success factors for CIT-360, and then to really give you a chance to ask any kinds of questions that you might have. It's been almost a week. It's been two-thirds of a week or something like that. And so now I'm sure that you have a lot of questions, and I want to kind of leave this with at least being able to say, hey, we've answered pretty much all the questions that you have. If questions come up during the presentation, then definitely feel free to raise them. We don't have to wait, but I just want to make sure you know that we're going to be giving you some time to ask whatever questions don't seem to be answered by the presentation. So with that in mind, I want to start with my top 5. I think it might, yeah. Top 5 reasons for being that make you successful. So I think there actually are 6 now that I think about it, but anyway, we'll get there. So the biggest thing, or probably the most important thing to be successful in the class, is to stay engaged in the class. You've probably already noticed that I use a lot of announcements. And the announcements are not there because I like to type or I like to show my face in the class regularly. Every single one of them is in response to something that has happened in the class in the past. Questions that have come from students, issues that they've had, concerns that they've had, and such. So if you stay close to the class and you're going in on Monday and you're checking out what the announcements are, you're going to be a lot more successful. I will probably answer most of the questions you have in the announcements. Obviously, if they don't answer what you have, you can certainly reach out to me. But what I've noticed, so part of it is, checking out the announcements, but the other part of it is actually reading them and understanding them. And I'll give you an example of this just from last semester. I had a student, so what we talk a lot about, I talk about it in here and in other places in the content as well as in the announcements, we talk about learning iteratively. And as a part of learning iteratively, which is going to be one of the success factors here, but as part of learning iteratively, you'll be turning in assignments iteratively. And so I had a student that showed up on my virtual doorstep on the second to the last day of the semester. And he posted for me all of the material for the class. And I reviewed it. Took me forever because there was so much, but I reviewed it. And in several situations, he didn't, because he didn't do it iteratively, there were some topics that he hadn't really gone to the point where I felt like he had reached a basic understanding. And the result of that was that he didn't pass the course. And so he reached out to me and he said, "What happened?" And I said, "Well, the class is structured in such a way that you turn some in, you get feedback from me. You turn some more in, you get feedback from me. It's iterative. And so you're always getting feedback from me that guides you, so that really when you get to the end of the semester, you should have a really good idea of where you're at without me even telling you." And he said, "Well, I didn't understand that that was part of the structure of the class." And I said, "Well, really, we've been talking about it the entire time." So if you stay engaged, if you read the stuff that's posted, if you read the course material, you're just going to have so much more of a chance of being successful. And then one other thing to add to it, and I probably cover this in the next one too, but, or in a couple down, it's really about, in addition to staying engaged, not giving up. And that's part of being engaged, because students that don't give up pass the class. Students that give up don't. And I can say that almost 100% equivocally that that's the case. So the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is using your team. We were just talking about this beforehand. You're going to be assigned a team. You're going to be a member of a team. And, you know, technology people often are really, we're kind of introverted. We kind of like to do stuff on our own. You know, we're independent. And so when we hear about team stuff, we're kind of like, okay, you know, that might interest the marketing majors, but I'm not really interested in that. Well, the fact of the matter is that in most places that you're going to work as a team. And so here's a chance for you to get real live experience with working as a team. But there's a lot more to it than that, because you're going to find, actually, like Dana was saying, that the team kind of fills in the gaps for you. So things that you know really well will help somebody else, and things that maybe you're still kind of struggling with are going to be, you're going to understand them more by somebody else who's on your team.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I reviewed the upcoming team, the requirements there, and I didn't see any, like, is there a certain structure or something that we should go over each week, or something we should talk about, or is it just kind of open to the needs of the team?
A little of both. So you're going to put together a schedule, and this schedule is just around teaching the topics to each other. You do not turn anything in except your schedule as a team. You will turn in a schedule of your planned schedule at the beginning of the semester, and toward the end of the semester, you'll turn in kind of what actually happened. And there's a little bit of a grade there, a little bit of points you get from that if you kind of stick to your schedule, or stick fairly closely to your schedule, I should say. But that's really the only team deliverable that you have in the whole course. Where the value of your team comes in is teaching each other. And so, you know, you can do a lot of things with your team. Meeting on a regular basis and teaching each other topics is part of what the schedule is, and that's really the part that you need to do for those points. But you can do all sorts of other things. You can have, you know, the team review your assignments, your familiarity reviews. When it comes time to start developing an application, You can have your team take a look at that and provide you feedback. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do as a team throughout the entire semester. Does that help? Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, let's keep going. All right, the give up one. Too many students who could have passed give up. And I've had students tell me that out there in the university grapevine, this is a really scary class. And people talk about how hard it is. But if I was to ask you at the end of the semester how hard it was, you'd probably say, at least, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. So don't give up. There, you can pass the class regardless of your Java level, and you know, you can make it. You can definitely make it work. If you follow these steps, you will be able to pass for sure. So here's the bonus top 5. I think I just put this in there recently. Use the text. So there are 2 texts associated with the class. There's a primary text and there's the prior text that's used in the earlier Java class. So a lot of times students will come to me and say, I can't find anything on the internet about application controller pattern or something, whatever it is. And I'll ask them, have you looked in the text? No. Well, if you go look in the text, there's a great example of it there. All of the topics that we cover are covered in the text. Now, this is a class about learning how to learn. It's about being able to take your own initiative and ownership of learning. And that's why it's structured in an unstructured way. And so a lot of the time that you're going to be learning, you're probably going to be, you know, Googling topics and doing that kind of thing. But don't forget about the text, because it's there and it can provide you a lot more than maybe you think. We talked a little bit about learning iteratively. Don't wait till the last minute. The other part of this class is about not just learning how to learn, but learning how you learn. Learning how to help yourself learn. So some of us, and I include myself in this, am professional procrastinators. So if you recognize within yourself that you're a professional procrastinator, you're going to have to work a little harder in an unstructured environment to turn things in. Because unlike your typical math class where you have an assignment every week and it's due every week, while there is a place for you to post your familiarity review every other week, you're not docked any points if you don't turn one in. What ultimately, your familiarity review is due at the end of the semester. So if you find that you learn visually better, then I suggest that you go out and find information about the different topics on YouTube, or on things that are visual. If you're a kinetic learner, which some people are, I don't know, that's like reading and running in place. I don't know exactly what it means, but but anyway, you just have to kind of figure that out and use that to your advantage. So learning iteratively is about learning something, turning it in, me providing you feedback, learning more, and so forth and so on. If you turn in, let's say that in your first familiarity review, you turn in information on collections. It may mean I may give you feedback that say, hey, here's 2 or 3 things you need to do to bring this up to a basic level. That doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean that you get any less points, because I don't really give you points until the end. I mean, you can see them there, but they don't really mean anything until the end. So learning iteratively is really important. And then the last one is embrace the differences. So I put this in here because sometimes students see that the class is unstructured and different than their typical university class, and it just bugs them so bad that they can't focus on actually doing the work in the class. And you may kind of laugh at that, but I probably have 1 or 2 students a semester that happens. And oftentimes they aren't successful in the class because they just can't get around the fact that it's different. One example of this is I had a student who actually had tons of programming experience, and they saw that Hibernate was one of the topics. And the guy says, nobody uses Hibernate. And I said, well, I beg to differ because I use it. And lots of people that I've come, lots of different places that I've worked for and had experience with have used Hibernate. And he said, well, because nobody uses it, I'm not going to do anything with it. And I said, okay, I mean, that's really up to you. It's not up to me. And he was so bugged by that he dropped out of the class. And you know what? He came back next semester. And you know what? Hibernate was still there. So he couldn't run away from it. So embrace the differences. Try to have a positive attitude, and you will find that it really works for you, and you'll find that you learn a ton from it. So that's the top 5 plus 1. Any questions, comments, concerns about the top 6 here?
I have one question.
Sure.
Are in the developer forums, is that where we would post questions about something that maybe we didn't quite understand, that we couldn't get the information from our team?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the team too. I would say you could post it in both places, and but definitely in the developer forum. There are really a couple reasons why we have the developer forum. One of them is a way to keep you engaged, honestly. It keeps you coming in. You have to post at least 3 posts a week there that are substantive, you know. But the other and really more important reason is that it gives you a place to go to learn from the whole class. So you've got a team that you can learn from in a smaller grouping, and then you have the whole class as a forum that you can learn from as well. So thank you, great question. Any other questions? Okay. Let's talk about, I already kind of covered some of this. I always forget what's next, and so I just cover it all on the first slide. I don't know if you've ever do that, but I sometimes do that in presentations at work. And then I have to skip through 5 slides because I already talked about all the stuff. So let's talk about what you're going to learn from the class, because, if you read the syllabus, I think it says something like, this isn't really a software development class, or it's not a language class or whatever. So the question is, well, what is it then if it's not any of those things? It may not be any of those things, but there are definitely things that you learn there. Man, this is going to take forever, huh? Primarily, it's like I mentioned earlier, it's about learning how you learn and learning how people learn outside of academia. And let me talk a little bit more about that. So right now at work, we're doing a loan program. And what that means is, that doesn't mean like getting a loan. It means that we're taking some people who work in different departments, and we're bringing them in to the department I work in, which is in enterprise cybersecurity. but we're a development team. We're a software shop in enterprise cybersecurity, and we're bringing them in so that they can learn what we do. And they have already expressed an interest in kind of getting into technology, maybe getting into cyber. So we've got these six associates that are coming in. And how are they going to learn? We want to teach them how to use Agile development and Scrum. We want to teach them just some basic technology kinds of things. We want to teach them a little more about information security and cyber. Well, a lot of the way that we're going to teach them is through their own learning. It's going to be, we're not going to have like formal training on all of these things because our teams are busy. They've got work to do. And training costs a lot of money. And so instead, we've been pointing them to different YouTube videos they can watch, pointing them to some Lynda videos or some Lynda training that they can take, and some things like that. That's, for the most part, the way people in the industry, and at least in technology, learn. They read a book, they go out and they explore on the internet and find what they can find there. That's really how they learn. So we're trying to model how people learn outside of academia in this class. So it's not because, we don't have it structured this way because Brother Tuckett doesn't really want to teach, or because, a lot of times I hear students say, he doesn't want to teach, or let's just let Lynda teach the students instead of having a faculty member teach them, or whatever. It's not about that. It's about structuring a class in a way so that you get real world experience with learning. In addition to how you learn, then, like I mentioned before, it's really about learning about yourself, what your strengths and what challenges you and how you learn and all that kind of stuff. It's also about learning how software development happens outside of school. When I was in school, actually I went to Rick's College, a computer science degree there, and when I was going there, we wrote our programs and we saved them to floppy disks, and 5 1/4 back then, the black ones. And if we wanted to share them with a team, we kind of passed the discs around. And when I got into the real world, even back then, we used something kind of like GitHub. It wasn't GitHub. GitHub wasn't around. But we used a software repository, and we used IDEs, integrated development environments. We did these kinds of things even back in the day. So learning a little more about how software development actually happens outside of the academic world is important. Hopefully you learn a little bit more about how to pace yourself, how to prioritize your work, and ultimately how to be a better programmer. Now, at this point in time, I usually have a student or two that says something like, well, I don't ever want to be a programmer. Okay, that's fine. Most of the people that I come in contact with in IT, in technology, do some level of programming. Whether they're a network engineer, whether they're a business analyst, or a project manager. Maybe project managers don't. I give them a bit of a hard time. Regardless of what you are in technology, you're going to have to understand logic. You're going to have to at least have to talk to programmers. You can't avoid them forever. They will find you. And so there are things that you can learn from a class like this that will benefit you. In the world today, one of the biggest things that we do is we write automated testing, and not just programmers, but DBAs and network engineers and operations people, we write automated testing, whether it's to do monitoring, whether it's to, just check the health of your system, or as a part of a deployment. All that is programming related. So questions on this, what you learn piece here? Okay. So the last slide here is really about the structure of the class. And sometimes this is one of the harder things to get your head around. So the first and foremost, really everything in the class is due at the end. Okay. So the only exceptions to that are the schedule that you put together as a team at the beginning. That really can't be due at the end, right? Although that's the plan schedule, the actual schedule is pretty much due at the end. Your developer forum, you can't make up for a week that you're not there. So you have to be doing it each week if you want to get points each week. So those are really the only two things I can think of. But you'll find that if you look in the assignments area under your feasibility, what do we call them now? We keep changing the name. The familiarity reviews, that every 2 weeks, there's a spot for you to post it. The thing is that, so you can do that every 2 weeks. Or like that one guy I gave you an example of, you can just post it at the end, but you're not learning iteratively. But there's a couple of things to consider. And the first one is that there are two different streams of work, two different approaches or options you can take for the class. It's like plan A and plan B, I think, in the syllabus. And I don't know if I've got them plan A right and plan B right, but basically there's a plan that gets you to at least a C, and there's a plan that can get you above a C. Now, why would I ever want to start out with only getting a C, right? I'm an A person. Well, there's a lot of things that are going on in your life, right? And there are times when you kind of get to the point, well, hey man, this is my last class before I graduate, and if I can just pass this thing, I will be happy. That happens, to a lot of people. And you know what? There's no judgment here. I understand. So there's one plan where you just have to turn in the different topics, and there's the professionalism thing, and then at the end you have your journal. And if you do well, if you get to a basic level of understanding on your topics and your professionalism and all of that, you can pass the class. You don't have to write a program that you turn in as an individual assignment. But if you want to be above that passing, kind of in that passing range, and you want to get a B or an A, then the key there is really around the individual application. It's creating an application. You create it yourself. It's not with your team. It's your own. And you're incorporating. So for the first 10 weeks, you will work on the topics. And each of the topics that you get to basic on by the end of week 10, you can use in your individual application. So if you get all of them, then you can use all of them in your individual application. And that means that each of those can go from being basic to being higher than basic. So that means that you can go from getting, basic is like a D on a topic, but when you add the other stuff in, it gets you to a C. Basic is like a D, and if you add to it, you can get a C, B, or an A on each topic, okay? If you incorporate it into your application. If you in the first 10 weeks, only get 2 topics to basic, it's okay. You can write an application that uses the 2. It can use all the topics, but you only get to get more points for the 2. And that's still more, right? That might not be an A, but it's more than a C. So you, again, in plan B, you build an application starting after week 10. And so you got like a month to do that. And during that time, you're going to write a program that integrates these different topics we've been talking about and get many more points on. So that is the 2 topics. I don't know how much it is. Let's see. So that's option 1 and option 2. Okay. 2 options. Okay, so option 2, so your application that you build is a client-server application. It's generally, this class is building an Android application. And that is by far the preferred scenario for you to go down. But I will also allow for a web-based application, as long as it's client-server based, meaning it has a server component and it has a client component. The client component can be, just a web browser, HTML, JavaScript, and such, or it can be an Android application, which is also client-server based. So, questions about these 2 options? This is usually where I get most of the questions.
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
So what you're saying right here, the work stream that you're talking about, this is for all of the topics. This is not for the final 4 weeks, correct?
So if you want to go plan option 1 here and get a C, you can spend the entire semester on the topics.
Okay.
Right? If you want to get more than that, if you want option 2, then you're going to spend the first 10 weeks getting to basic on the topics, and then the next 4 weeks building an application.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. What other questions you guys have?
I had a question about the client-server aspect.
Yeah.
So for that server, are we going to be spinning up a server, a virtual machine, or are we going to have an instance to work in?
Great question. So what you turn into me through the semester in topics and with your application at the end is code. Okay? So you don't have to turn into me a working application that you demonstrate using an externally hosted service.
Okay.
You could, if you want to do that on your own, you can, but you could run the whole thing locally and write your code for your program, and I don't have to know about that.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I know
Yeah,
that's different than some other
that makes
classes
perfect sense.
where you have to run some kind of an externally hosted service for your server. And you don't have to do that here. You're going to have a database component. You're going to have an application server component like Tomcat, but those could just run locally for you. And you submit to me your code, and I look through your code, and I can tell from your code whether it worked or not.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Great question, Aaron. Other question?
I've got a question, the same thing with the client server application.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be, the user interface doesn't have to be fully functioning so that you could literally go in, queue the database, add or remove components of that. It just has to be the code that shows that that's how it would function.
So I can usually tell if it's functional or not. It ought to run. Now, let me say this. Let me say it this way. here is a typical thing I see for a student who's taken option 2 here. They, the first thing you will do as a part of that is propose an application to me. So you write a little proposal for me. The things that I'm most concerned about is just making sure that it's client server and you kind of understand what the design is that you're going to be doing and stuff like that. And usually students will bite off like this enormous chunk for of an application. You know, we see these applications in Android or iOS or whatever, and we think, man, I mean, I want to build that. So we always want to build like this full-featured thing. And I'll usually give you some hints like, you know, that's quite a bit to bite off, but hey, if you want to do it, that's fine. And so they'll start to build something that's kind of big, and then they end up scaling it down, like a little bit of scaling each week, down each week until they get to the end. But what I want you to do is have a functioning application. It may not have all the features that you wanted it to have. So what I always suggest is something that we always try to do in Agile software development is at the end of each iteration, have something that works. So don't start with something so big that you're not going to end up with something that works.
So run it more on a modular basis.
Yeah.
So the modules will fit together. And if I don't get all 3,700 modules that would take to do the entire program, I have a functioning piece that demonstrates each of those coding topics.
Yes, exactly right. And if you don't implement all of the coding topics, even though if you have done 10 of them and you only implement 5 of them, that's fine, right? That's better. And that's a lot better than trying to do 10 and actually not having anything function in 10.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. What other questions you guys have? Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes left. Obviously, we don't have to use the whole time. I used to have a project manager I worked with that could fill an hour with 5 minutes worth of stuff. It actually takes a fair amount of skill to be able to do that. I don't really like that. I don't really do that myself. But the next 15 minutes are really yours to ask any question that you have, whether it's about the topics, whether it's about the course, whether it's about anything, you know, anything. I'm no longer an ecclesiastical leader, so I can't really help you with some of those things, but anything you have, any other questions that you might have?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Sure.
So IDE, I believe that you, in a discussion board post or something, said that any IDE is acceptable.
Uh-huh.
So
that is right.
Even though in the course it says that you're supposed to use NetBean.
Yeah, I actually think there's one document that says, so one of them talks about installing NetBeans, and then in another one it talks about IntelliJ.
Yeah. So I use IntelliJ.
Okay.
But that's another question I have. So I've been trying to figure out how to use Get with it.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've seen so far, there's not a native way to upload to a Get repository.
So I'm glad you asked that. So let me go back to the IDE one first, and then I'll give you the Get one. Okay. So NetBeans, let's talk a minute about NetBeans. So NetBeans used to be, or there are still versions that are maintained by Oracle. NetBeans actually came from Sun, and Sun actually got it. It was a thing called Forte for Java, yeah, which was an open source application. So that all went to Oracle when Oracle bought Sun. Oracle maintained it for a while and actually did a pretty good job with NetBeans. And then like a year or so ago, they dumped it off at Apache. A lot of the support around it has dwindled. Its support for different versions of Java, the different plugins that are available for different versions of Hibernate and other things have kind of dwindled. But if you want to use it, you can use it. I have some videos on integrating things like Get and Tomcat. And I'm providing, I have some that are on with Eclipse, but most of them are with IntelliJ. So to answer your Git question, Aaron, I have a video that step-by-steps through integrating IntelliJ with Git.
Okay, awesome.
So I'll provide that out there for you to take a look at. And so with that though, you can choose any of those three. I mean, I guess you could find another one, but honestly, those are really the main ones anymore. And my experience is that NetBeans is really used academically and not really beyond that anymore. If I was to, poll 1,000 software engineers, I'd probably find that 900 of them use Eclipse. And maybe 100 of the 100, probably 90 of the 100 use IntelliJ. And one of the big reasons why is because IntelliJ costs some money and Eclipse doesn't. So use what you will. Great. Other questions?
Oh, okay. I have a question. I've used IntelliJ. I kind of switched over from that to that from NetBeans a few years ago, and I have it integrated with a Git account. So all I need to do is make sure that my account is first name, last name.
So all I care is that I can access it. So what you will do is, so your familiarity review, there is a template, there's a Word document that's associated there. And basically what you're going to do with your familiarity review is you're going to take a topic and you're going to write a little program that demonstrates that you have a basic knowledge of that topic, and you're going to put some information in that Word document, and you can have more than one in there. You could have 5 of them if you want. Because we're doing this iteratively, I'd suggest you have more like 2 or 3, but it's fine if you have more. But the key is that for each file, each Java file that you're going to want me to look at, you're going to provide me a link. The link is to your GitHub repository. So I don't really care what you name your GitHub repository, because all I'm doing is hitting the link. As long as the link works and I have access, I don't care really beyond that. So if you already have a repository and you just want to subdivide it and put your stuff in another section of it, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so as long as the link goes to it, and then would I put several links? Let's say I have three topics that I want to turn in on this week. I can put 3 different links. Do I need 3 different templates? Or on the one template, can I just break it down to each of the 3?
Yep, you can put multiple links in the same. And let me just add to that if you have, if your program has 3 classes, so it has 3 files, put a separate link for each of the 3. Or at least, and the reason for that is that sometimes I get a link which is like to your whole repository, and then I spend 20 minutes trying to find the files.
That would be frustrating.
Yeah, I give up pretty quick, honestly, and I send it back because I've got 30 of them to do, So I'll send it back to you and ask you if you could provide me the links to the files. That makes it a lot faster. You're going to get feedback faster, and hopefully that'll benefit you.
Now, if we turn in more than, it says every 2 weeks to turn them in, can we turn them in more often into that same repository, or no?
You can do that. So you're going to submit your Word document to the assignment. You're going to post it in the assignment. If you were to post one a couple times, you know, like rather than waiting till 2 weeks from now, if you were to just post another one in the same place, I would pick it up and look at it. It's really meant for every other week to kind of get you to think a little bit longer term, spend a little more time. And honestly, for the most part, if people are doing it every other week, that's actually pretty good, because a lot of times students don't post that frequently. So if you're going to post it a little more than that, that's fine. I only grade once a week. So if you're posting 3 times a week, you're really only going to get me to look at it once in that week.
Is there a particular day of the week that you look at them?
Usually at the beginning, like Monday or Tuesday, but it just depends on how hectic the week is.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great questions. What other questions do you have? 6 more minutes. Can I throw out just a couple more things? Just came to my mind. I think there's one of the documents in course materials that says that you have to post a professional behavior document every time you post a familiarity review. And that is not true. And in actuality, I wouldn't post one in about 6 or 7 weeks. I'm going to post an announcement that says, hey, start submitting your professional behavior assignments. So if you focus on, for each week, I have here's the stuff that's going on this week post. If you just follow and look at the stuff that's in each of those weekly posts, you will be fine. So I'm not going to list professional behavior in there until like week 7 or 8 or something. So if it's not in there, I wouldn't worry about it. Any other questions? Okay. Well, obviously, if there's anything else that comes up, questions that come to your mind, feel free to reach out to me. Reach out to me either by submitting a question in the inbox or whatever we call that thing, the messaging within Canvas, or send me an email via my Gmail account. Actually, if you post it in Canvas, it actually forwards it to my Gmail account, and then when I respond, I usually respond from my Gmail account. So either way is fine. You don't have to remember my email address. You can always just post it in Canvas, but feel free to reach out to me. And then questions that are more general, definitely post in the developer forums. They'll start next week. I should have all of the teams set up by this weekend. So you should be able to start working with your team even early next week. Very good. All right, well, thank you. It's been great to have this little bit of time together. Thanks for coming and taking a little time out of your day, out of your night, I guess. The Utah Utes are playing UCLA right now, so I know it was a sacrifice to come to this. So,
Thank you, Brother Tuckett.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Guys.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you.